The sales date and initial pricing for the Corvette C8 in Europe were released a couple of weeks ago, and this included right-hand drive for the UK. In this video, I'll take a look at the details and explain what that means for Australia. Contrary to some Australian press reports, GM has confirmed once again the plan to sell a right-hand drive C8 Corvette. They've stated sales will begin in Europe in late 2021, and this will include right-hand drive cars for the UK. This statement from GM also provided some information on the configuration of the European cars. GM will build a special introductory model to kick off sales called the Launch Edition. This will come with 3LT top-of-the-line trim package, plus the Z51 track pack. To offset the harsh ride that comes with the Z51 pack, the car will be fitted with the magnetic selective ride suspension option, allowing drivers to select different levels of damper stiffness so they can soften the Z51's harsh ride. All in all, this is a pretty nice package for those who want a special C8. The price of this Launch Edition model in the UK has been given as £81,700, or just under 150,000 Australian dollars. But this is a simple currency conversion to Australian dollars and doesn't take into account the different duties and taxes between the countries. GM has also revealed the configuration of the Europe entry-level model, as distinct from the previously mentioned Launch Edition. This car will be spec'd with 2LT trim, the second level up, and will also come with the Z51 track pack as standard. There's even mention of a lower spec car at a later date. Now, the price I previously mentioned is for the Launch Edition, so this entry-level model should be a little less expensive. Now, if you follow my videos, you'll know I'm critical of the Z51 track pack as a mandatory option for Australia, and I do feel the same about making it mandatory for Europe. I think the upgraded exhaust is essential, primarily for its sound, but it's available as a standalone option. There's no need to get the pack to get that exhaust. The upgrade to the Brembo brakes is also quite desirable, but mostly for their looks, and it also gives you the choice of colour. But performance-wise, the stock brakes would have to be expected to handle the braking perfectly well for road usage. The other items in the pack are definitely track-oriented and not required for a road car, and in particular, the Z51 pack provides a very harsh ride, which I don't think we should be forced into. Now, overall, what does this mean for Australia? First and foremost, it confirms yet again the right-hand drive version of the car is still going ahead, as I've said many times in my videos. Timing-wise, the UK C8 was always planned to be released before the Australian version. How much later the Australian version will be depends on the changes required on the UK car to meet the Australian compliance rules, the ADRs. But since the ADRs are in most cases interchangeable with the ECE regulations, the changes would be expected to be minimal. This would mean the Australian C8 should be available by the end of 2021, or more likely early 2022. But will GM offer the same spec cars in Australia? Most likely they will, but it's not guaranteed. With our poor exchange rate here and our outrageous luxury car tax, it's just possible GM may do a special pack for us. But personally, I'm betting on a duplicate of the UK specs. Now, for interest's sake, I've priced out the UK base package, or 2LT trim and Z51 track pack, assuming this will be the entry level for Australia, and I've used the same formula as in all my previous videos. I've also noted the US price for that configuration, assuming an exchange rate of 70 US cents to the Aussie dollar. The calculation gives me a price of around 134,000 Australian dollars plus some $10,000 on-road costs, and this would be the minimum amount required to own a C8 in Australia. And that sounds about right. Interestingly, when I look at the UK spec Launch Edition, which adds 3LT trim and magnetic ride to the base spec just mentioned, I get almost the same Australian price as my simple currency conversion, namely just under 150,000 Australian dollars, but make that 160,000 on road. But you've got to say, all in all, the price is pretty good for a factory-built new C8 delivered here. Compare that with what you'd get for the same money buying a locally converted C7. I must say I do agree with GM in not offering the 1LT trim level in Australia. The 2LT trim brings heads-up display, sat-nav and the rear-view camera, as well as 14-speaker Bose sound and heated and ventilated seats. Just think about it, what would the press say about a car costing around 150k and not having those essential luxury items? In the industry they call that the cost of entry. Now, most importantly, when will we hear more from GM about C8 in Australia? The issue that's been holding this up is the big dispute that's been going on between GM and the exiting Holden dealerships. The dealers were demanding a much larger compensation package than GM was prepared to offer them. But last week, GM prevailed, with over 2/3 of the dealers accepting the offer, although it was obvious many were doing so reluctantly. This has now removed the impediment preventing GM announcing the formation of GM Special Vehicles, or GMSV, the organisation that will distribute the C8 in Australia, along with other selected GM vehicles, which will be converted to right-hand drive by the Walkinshaw Group. So keep an eye out for an announcement soon. And I'll bring you all the information when it's available, and include all the implications and the things I read between the lines regarding C8 in Australia. The C8 tale, particularly here in Australia, reminds me of the never-ending story. Will we ever see C8 here? Well, I'm totally confident it will arrive, but patience is needed, as it's still more than a year away. So stay tuned to my channel to get the most accurate news on C8 as it comes to hand. And for now, keep on vetting, stay healthy, and I'll catch up with you again real soon.